3, 2, 1, bang.
Hi everybody, it's Sonosi. Based on the where, you can guess we're going for something important today. We're talking about the state of women's MMA and how we can help save it. Now, for most of you, and I don't blame you, I'm in for most of it, most of women's MMA is not exactly entertaining, but it has been lacking lately, and with UFC 300 announcements and the comments of Sean Strickland, the comments about should we separate women's MMA from men's MMA, should we get rid of it entirely, it's been a whole ongoing discussion. So I figured we kind of go over a couple of points and see what we can do to potentially save women's MMA, at least in the UFC, and see what kind of improvements we can do about it. A lot of this is speculation, but these are the kind of things I've kind of researched and kind of looked into who might help us in the long run. Let's go over it. So, pedigree of a fighter. I feel this is a very important topic to kind of bring up for women's MMA. In terms of the sport, we've gone through, at least for the UFC, about 31 years in the sport, whereas MMA in itself really started formatting around the 70s. Had some things in between it, but the point is, as a sport itself, it has now existed for long. We have a lot more completed fighters in this day and age. For women's MMA, I feel we're currently 2 decades behind, so I would say we're about in the Zuffa era or Pride FC, where they're not completed fighters. There's some special out there, then there's some people who are trying to learn the arts but are not completed yet. And in terms of some of the people who are the best of their talents, you have people like Valentina Shevchenko and Joanna. I'm not going to pronounce the name because I'm going to butcher it. They train at a very young age in kickboxing, Muay Thai. And then you have people like Ronda Rousey, who had a crazy jujuka mother trying to go armbar on her. She was trained at a very young age. And then you have people who are Olympic medalists like Kara Harrison, who are pretty good at the sport. These are the kind of people that become champions or very known. They are the few. You got to keep something else in mind. Most of the women that you are used to seeing around, well, they're in a very minority of a group. Most women do not train to become fighters. Hell, most women don't even think about becoming fighters. You gotta realize that's a very small niche of people as it is. So when you think of it in that way, of course you're not going to expect as much. It's a talentless pool, or I should say, it's compared to the men's MMA, it's a much smaller pool. I should be corrected. Not so much they're talentless, it's just that there isn't that many pickings in the first place. So you got to keep that in mind, people, before we go anywhere else. But I feel there's other points I do kind of want to make, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. Alright, so we're going to bring up a more fun topic now. Heavier weight classes introduced. So I know this is not a very popular one, considering Dana White more or less killed off the women's featherweight division. There are a couple of attempts still on the thing, and they have upcoming fights. Makes you wonder if they're going to keep 145 as the division, or they're going to keep them just for a minimum amount of fights. But anyway, point is, we need heavier women. Heavier women means most chances of knockouts. I mean, look at the men's heavyweight division, light heavyweight. Bigger percentages of KOs. We need that excitement factor. We have a Chris Cyborg who was pretty dominant in the sport, pretty deadly. We do have a couple other featherweights in there. So we have people like Lasira Pachenko, who defeated Kara Harrison, has a pretty good record of KOs and stuff going through her. You also have people like, what's her name? Josie Nunes. In the UFC currently right now, just keeping that in mind, who has a fight coming up in March. She has a couple of KOs and everything, and she's kind of miniature for her size, but she's a 145, and she's pretty decent at it too. Then you have people like Kara Harrison coming through. I wouldn't use her as a big example because she does not really have that KO power. It doesn't show it off as much. But I do want to keep in mind for something for you guys to think about, though. If we can get heavier women into the weight classes, we might lose out on some skill, but we might get a little bit more excitement out of it. Now, unfortunately for us, as is, I know what you're thinking, we don't have that many featherweights as it is. What do you expect us to do for 155, 175? Listen, you see a bunch of these women scrapping in Walmarts and stuff like that. Minimum training, a little bit of discipline. Hell, we have female boxers and stuff like that. Just make a heavier weight classes, bring the women in, even if not the greatest in the world. Guess what? We gotta start from somewhere. I'm just saying, guys, it's not pretty right now. in terms of everything else, you have places like Invicta don't even have their featherweight division right now going there. And I believe ONE FC might be one of the only ones that actually has a women's featherweight division still running. But that is a perfect segue because I think I should mention something that's very important that we need to consider for the future as well. This is the part where people might be scratching their heads seeing this topic and say why. So lower weight classes, the atom weights in particular, I feel might be an issue you might want to consider in the future. Now hear me out, I know what you're thinking right now. So no, see, the weight class we have for the lowest right now for straw weights bore us. Why would you subjugate us to more pain? Well, I want to consider something for you guys. Some of the most skilled women in the world right now are in Eastern Europe and Asia. You have people like Chihiro Sawada and Stamp Fairbanks, who are very dangerous atom weights in ONE FC right now. I'm not saying you gotta grab them per se. These are women who weigh about like 115, I believe is the weight class, and the size is about 4'11", 5 foot tall. These are people who are not making it to the other weight classes. And yes, I know what you're thinking also. Isn't that just going to produce more boring fights? Possibly, but you're talking about more skillful fighters. And I've seen a lot of them get some nice finishes off as well. And hey, for all you people who care about looks and stuff, guess what? Skinnier women is less likely they're going to be fat, which means they may be hotter, is all you know. But I'm saying atom weight might be considered a possibility, especially if we're getting rid of 145. And if we're not going to do anything with heavier women, we might as well bring lower women in there, and we might get more choices, is what I'm saying. And then, you know, we can start taking some talents from the other places, and hopefully they can help build up the UFC. But it does not really matter as much because there is one subject you kind of need on top of skill and lethality, and that is personality is a very important thing. Sometimes it can be argued as a potential it factor of someone. You have Israel Adesanya. I kind of want to gag when I think of saying that for any kind of personality because he's a cringy person. You have Sean Strickland, who's become very popular in the last year. But the point is, you need someone who has that energy, that passion, that personality to help you elevate yourself. Juliana Pena is trying to become the female Kobe Covington, if you ask me. And considering how much he flopped in that last fight, we might actually end up needing that kind of energy right now. Ronda Rousey was a superstar. Her brash personality, her dominance, it all packaged together and decent looking, I guess, as well. I kind of want to go on the subsect of saying that kind of goes into personalities almost, because I don't want to make this a whole section because it's a little controversial, but let's say you do need some looks. Let's be honest. Paige Van Zandt almost... Well, let's not say even almost. They were trying to market her as a superstar just on her looks alone. And considering how much money she made outside of the UFC afterwards, it worked. So you definitely need to have a pretty face to help you. I'm not going to say that's going to help. Look at how many people thirst over people like Mackenzie Dern. So it goes to show you, sex sells, it always will sell. And that's one thing that the UFC women fighters have that men do not. That sex appeal does help you sell a little bit. I don't think it helps you in the long run, but I think I know it sounds a little odd saying that, but in a section it's called personality, and I know personality, you're thinking, tatas and os. Now we go to the final segment, the wild card / the entertainer aspect. This is kind of more of a mashup of ideas, but this is the kind of things I believe that could help for us. As much as people hate the BMF title, I think if you do to introduce a women's BMF style title, if you can find some people who are good finishers like Jessica Andrade, Weili Zhang, just using those examples, not saying those two have to fight. Those are the kind of people you kind of tag together and you say, screw the weight classes, we'll find a catch weight and we'll have them duke it out. Speaking of weight classes, you introduced open weight fights. Now I know what you're thinking about. There's weight classes for a reason, Sanosi. What are you thinking? This is not the old style UFC fights. You were correct, but you know what? It might just help us. I'm not saying put Cyborg versus Rose Namajunas, though that would be funny to watch. But no, sometimes you find people within maybe a 10-pound difference, maybe 15, not 20 or more, but you put them in fights like how he used to do with Pride FC, and you kind of see what happens from there. And I can't say it would help, but it could possibly. Even though this one seems funny, we did have champ fights before, like Valentina versus Amanda Nunes. That wasn't the most exciting fight, but UFC did bomb when they tried not going for Grasso and Weili Zhang, so you need more money fights like champ versus champ fights, two super fight people. Like if Cyborg was still in the UFC, her versus Kayla Harrison would have sold good numbers. Now, when I say good numbers, I mean more in the context of women's MMA. I don't mean necessarily the men. We know they ain't gonna happen for a long time. Victor might exist, but they haven't run an event since October, so. But you know what? Those kind of things, gimmicky things like. You listen, we have things like 1FC's rules of Muay Thai fights and submission grappling. I don't know about you, but seeing two hot girls roll around doing grappling might just entertain us enough and get some numbers up. And another one, those Muay Thai strike-only fights, they can be pretty vicious. You check out a bare knuckle FC fight, women there scrap, and it is bloody. So it goes, and I've seen it for the Asian market and Europe. They can fight pretty ferociously too. So you might need to do those stylized matches. I know Dana is not in the sport of copying other promotions or anything like that, but I've already discussed some ideas that he can use from his past. He can bring up more catchweight fights. Find a way to make it entertaining, because right now, most of the divisions are not that filled. I think, like I said, I think we need a lot of changes to help boost up the sport. I'm not saying these are going to all be the solutions that help fix it, but I'm saying it's a good start. Most important of all, we just need a star in the making. That might be Weili Zhang if she keeps it up. It might be someone like Erin Blanchfield if she continues to do what she does. It might be someone that we don't expect it to come from a different sport. It could be Kayla Harrison for all we know. I doubt that one, but you know, I think we're in desperation mode and we need a champion, superstar, somebody. We need another Ronda Rousey is what we need. Dana White was not into the whole idea of bringing women into MMA. Ronda Rousey changed his mind. I think he's having buyer's remorse now in current times. That's why the promotions are not really doing as well for their marketability for them. If they go for this, they might be able to turn it around. But again, we're in the Zuffa era of women's MMA. It's going to take some time before we get deadlier and more extremely talented women that make it excited to see a fight. We have a few amount of them. There's not enough right now. We got to boost it up. That is all for now, guys. I thank you for showing up, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.